everyone, it's Roberta. I'm back to try to do part 2 of the experiments with the homemade modeling paste. And when I was filming yesterday, the camera battery died, and that happened while I was trying to create the coffee ground modeling paste, so I'm just going to go ahead and start with that again today. And this again is the homemade modeling paste made with baking soda, Elmer's school glue, and just white acrylic paste. You could use colored paste if you wanted to make it colored. It's however you want to do it. I did it with baking soda, but if you have baby powder, you could use that. I'm going to add a little more water. The temperature is getting warmer, and so this is drying, so I have to put some moisture back in it. During the cold months, when my inside temps were about 40 to 50, this stayed nice and moist, but now that it's getting up to the 60s, it's starting to dry out a little bit. It's a lot smoother, it's a lot better of a texture. I still want to add a little more water, simply because I'm mixing it with the coffee grounds. And this actually looks like it would be icing for a cake, the kind you make with like confectionery sugar. And I'm not going to need this much of the coffee ground. Actually, I'll just go ahead and do it all, because I like to work with this one. It smells good, and it's pretty. And I'm going to need to make some more of this modeling paste. This looks and smells so wonderful with the coffee grounds. And these are used coffee grounds. These are not fresh coffee grounds. There's no reason to use the fresh. The used coffee grounds are just as good. And actually I think they're better because they're already moistened. They've already been brewed. So they're already smelling good. Let me see if I can get it to mix with that white bit up there at the top. And when I did this yesterday, I ran it through a piece of punchinella, this right here, and it's not going to be smooth because it already has some modeling paste on it. And let's see if I can find that one. Anytime I'm looking for one, I can hardly ever find it. It was this one here with this pattern. I don't know if you can see it with the white, maybe a different color. But anyway, that was the modeling, the stencil I used to get this pattern. And this time we're going to use the punchinella. And because it already has this texture, when I try to do this, it's not going to lay smooth, but it's still going to look totally awesome. I did one yesterday before the camera, when the camera battery shut off, and it looked great. So, just load it up. You have to make sure you hold your stencil still, because as you're pushing to drag the modeling paste through the holes, it's going to want to pull the stencil too. And this just looks like chocolate icing with chocolate, little tiny chocolate bits in it. But it's coffee. It smells wonderful. And you don't want to use day-old coffee grounds. You want to use fresh, because they do start getting a different smell that's not really that pleasant when they start going off. They actually get ready to start decaying, and so they start putting off a unpleasant smell. I'm going to go ahead and use that old bank card, credit card, whatever, but I just generally, because I'm doing videos, I just use some old store cards, the gift cards. That way there's no personal information I have to worry about trying to edit out or be careful with. And this cleans the mat really well. And this is just an old baking mat. I forget what brand it is. I need to go wash this off, so I'll be right back. Alright, I'm back. I'm going to dry this one a little bit real quick. And you can smell the coffee as it's heating up. It smells wonderful. Okay, I'm going to set this one off to the side, let it finish drying. I'm going to hold it up so you can see it. And to the next one, we're going to be doing green tea. And these are the inside grounds from a green tea. I make Jun tea, and it's a Jun kombucha kefir type thing, and you have to make it with green tea and then you feed it honey. So it's a green tea honey Jun, or Jun. Everybody pronounces it different. I tore this open. Here's the tea grounds, and you can see they're green. They're not black like the regular, more popular tea. And I also tore the tea bag because that can be used for ephemera as well. Tore up, or with the top of it cut off, this emptied out, and then just put on your ATC, your card, your mixed media, and then you hold it down with some gel medium, some gesso, some modeling paste, just different things that you could use to put it down, even just regular glue. I'm going to set that aside. And I'm not going to use all of this, so I'm going to go ahead and put some in here. I'm going to use this one for that and put this back in here. And I make sure that I wash these containers out as soon as I can, so that it does not dry to the inside of my containers. I have glass and plastic, and though you would be able to scour it off if it dries, that is really not anything you want to spend time doing. It is much easier just to go ahead and do it as soon as you are done using your product. And that's the reason you keep seeing me get up and go do something, is because I'm trying to make sure that my stencils, my silverware, my dishes are all clean. Okay, this is the green tea one, and I don't want to add any more. I think that looks good. So I'm going to put it on this one. And yes, I'm going to find another stencil. And on this one, I think I'm going to find, or use a larger stencil. And this is this big flower. And I just want to put some of this modeling paste on the end of my gift card and make sure that I'm holding this down as flat as I can, and then just spread it through. I think out of all of these, I really like this texture the best. It seems to be a lot smoother to go on. And I don't really smell this because I'm still smelling the coffee. That one is just a really potent fragrance, which is nice. The thing with this, it's not staying in as well. So I'm going over a couple of times. I'm going to try not to smooth it out too much and just leave it as textured and full as I can to see if that's going to help. And I believe I just need to add some more. And they don't really have to be smooth and flat. So that's the way I'm used to doing it, but on this one it seems I'm going to have to let it be extra full and bumpy. Okay, so I'm going to lift it up now, check it out. Awesome. I like that. That's got a lot of texture. And I can come in here and scrape this off so it's not on here where I don't want it. There we go. Look at that. I love it. Let me see if you can see it. A lot of texture on that. I'm going to set it aside, clean this one off just by scraping it. And you could save these for like maybe one day in the fridge. I wouldn't leave it out because it is a item that does degrade. You know, it starts its composting, and so you'd want to make sure that you keep it in the fridge, but only for maybe a day or two. Definitely don't let it sit out. Alright, I'm going to set this aside because I only have one more, and I can wash everything when I'm done. The next one was going to be this here. This is that egg crate pulp that I made the other day when I made the dog, the pig, and the bear. And what I ended up doing was, you know, I felt like it was taking too much time to sit here and tear this apart. And so what I had done was put it through my blender with extra water so that the water was above the amount of the pulp I had in there. And I did small batches at a time, and I just pulsed it until it became a liquid broth of pulp. Then I would pour it out onto a mesh bag. It's a grocery bag that you would put your produce in instead of using the plastic bags, and it has a very fine mesh, way more than gauze, way more than the kind of the cheesecloth. Those both, the gauze and cheesecloth, have too many big holes, but this mesh is really, really fine. And so I laid it on top of that, and then I twisted it up on itself so it sealed it. And then I just wrung it out, and wrung most of the water out, and came out with, you know, a form. It looked like a dough of, a cookie dough roll. And I just crunched it up, you know, tore it up again, and put it in a baggie, added a little bit of water, and then I used a glass jar. I don't have a rolling pin anymore. I had to move and, you know, get rid of a lot of things that I used to have. And so in place of a rolling pin, I just used like a spaghetti jar, pizza sauce jar, and just rolled it out so it's nice and flat. It was only about maybe 1/4 of an inch thick, 1/8 of an inch thick, and put it in the freezer. So it's ready anytime I need to pull it out. And the good thing about putting it in the freezer is when you freeze things, it breaks the fibers up, because when it freezes, it gets the moisture from in the freezer into it, and when something freezes with moisture, it expands, and when it expands, it breaks up the fibers. And that's why if you freeze a block of cheese, when you pull it out, you can't slice it in a clean slice anymore. It ends up just crumbling. And so when I put the pulp in the freezer before I put it through the food blender, it helped the fibers to separate and come apart, and then I did that. So now it's actually completely ready for me to use in any projects, and all I have to do is just break a little chunk off, leave it back in the freezer, and it's not a food item, so it's not like it's going to go bad. And so I have that in there for if I ever figure out, you know, other ways that I could utilize this. But today I'm going to use some of this and add some modeling paste to it and see what we can do with it. I'm not going to put it through a stencil unless I put it through a stencil with my hand and just try to form a shape. So maybe I'll do that. So I'm going to just put some in there, get some of the modeling paste. I always tell you I'm going to do something, and then while I'm doing it I end up changing my mind every time. So don't know why that happens. It's just the way my brain works. See how well this is going to mix up, because these are large chunks. And I need the fiber to break down into the modeling paste. And so if I had just put this through the blender and left a little bit of water in it, it would be perfect for this application right now. But we'll see if it's something worth repeating, because this is all just experimentation, just to see what new ways we can use the product we have on hand so that we're not out spending money all the time, because there's a lot of us who don't have the money to go out and buy product. And you know, this is how some of those products that we spend so much money on, this is how people experiment at home, come up with an idea, and then they sell it to a company who mass produces and sells for a lot of money, and people get rich off of it. This is how that kind of stuff starts. People are at home experimenting. So that's what I'm doing. So that seems to be pretty well integrated. And so let me find a stencil. This one does not have any texture, it's just flat. And I want to scrape it a little bit so it'll not have that waxy smooth surface on it. And I have my pair of scissors here. I know what they're called and I just can't think of it right offhand. But anyway, and I just use the little sharp points on there and scrape off the finish. And I don't push too deep, but it does make some gouges in the front of this paper, which is great, because that gives whatever I put on it, whether it's just regular gesso or paint, glue, whatever, it makes it hold on. And this is going to have a lot of weight to it, so I want to make sure that the gouges are deep enough for it to have teeth. Something for it to hold on to. Alrighty, that looks like it's scraped up pretty good. Can you guys see that? I know you can see the frayed bits there. And you can see some of it here. You wipe off as much as you can. And I can see I need a little bit more scrapage on this side here. You do enough of this, see all the little fibers down there? You could create your own paper pulp again. Alright, I think that's ready. I'm going to use this stencil, just part of the butterfly, not the whole thing. I think I'll just use like the top part of the wing. And using the card, I don't think it's going to be able to be smoothed out into these holes. So I'm just trying to do it with my finger and see how it goes. And because it's fiber, when I pick this up, I'm sure there'll be bits of it that are still stuck on the stencil that'll pull some of it away. But again, experimenting, right? Just trying something new to see how it goes. The eggshell one, I think I want to do that one over. I had added, instead of water, I put alcohol in it, and it seems to have made the texture paste be really fluffy. It just expanded the way a marshmallow does when you're roasting it, you know, cooking it and browning it over a fire. And you don't see any of the little eggshell grit in there. So I was thinking I'd like to try that over. If this doesn't work, all I have to do is just scrape it all off and then try something else. Okay, and it didn't leave that much behind, but that's okay. Some parts have more than other. I'm just kind of smooth it out. Interesting texture. And then I'm just going to clean this up. Let me get my credit card. I know where I put it. Put it over here somewhere, I'm sure. I can't find it. Oh, use this one. AARP, trying to get me. I don't need you people, go away. Anyway, I'm going to clean up these modeling pastes and my stencils that I've used. And then I'll be back so that we can dry our projects. This one is the one with the egg crate pulp. Let me see if you can see it. This is the one with the green tea grounds. This is the one with the coffee grounds, which when you smell it, ooh, it smells so good. Alright, I'll be back in a few. I wanted to show you again the ones that I had done yesterday. This is that egg shell, the crushed eggshells. And as you can see, you can barely see any eggshells in there. You can see a little piece here, and a piece here, and a piece here. And it's actually, filled with little eggshell pieces. But it's so bumpy. And I don't know if that's the calcium in the eggshells or if it was the alcohol that I had put in instead of the adding water into the modeling paste. Not sure. I really like how this one turned out. It's not painted or dyed or colored yet, but I like the texture. This is the one that I did with the shaved crayon bits. And it just has little tiny bits of color throughout. You can see little bits of blue and purple and green and yellow and orange and red. And then the bigger chunks, they melted as I dried it with a heat gun. In each of these, when I dried it, the texture paste itself did not respond. So whatever I added to it changed the way that the texture paste responds to heat when you heat with the heat tool, which I found very interesting. And you could use it to your advantage. Something you want to have melt and not the texture paste. That'd be cool. This one is all bumpy. It's because it's a large portion of the shaved crayon bits, and I just did it over the whole ATC and melted it. And you can see there were places where there's bigger chunks of waxy crayon, and so they responded by melting. And then you see these other tiny bits that didn't, and you would think that the smaller ones would respond sooner, but it didn't. The more wax that's in a combined area melts faster than the little tiny pieces, which I also found very interesting. You would think the tiny bits would melt before the large ones, but it didn't happen that way. So I love this one. It reminds me of confetti. And then I took everything that I had left over, including the coffee one, which I don't know where my original coffee one went to. But I took the remainder of the coffee and put it all over in different areas on here. And then I took the eggshell and put it on. You can see some with bits of eggshell throughout. And then I also did, of course, the shaved crayon. And I did it over just a whole manila folder. And in doing this, I realized what I should have done was glued the two together before I did the top. And so that's what I'll do today at the end of my experiments, is take the balance of everything that I have left over and take a brand new manila folder and make sure I glue or tape it together for it to be cut into ATCs before I put the texture paste samples on it. Because trying to adhere this with glue or tape with this kind of texture on it is not going to be an easy process. Because you don't want to put pressure on this to break it or crush it or crumble it, break it all apart. Doesn't that look yummy though? So this is the coffee, the shaved crayon, and the crushed eggshell. Alright, so here are the ones that we worked on today, and I want to heat them with the heat tool to see how they respond. And the ones below are getting dried by the heat being over this. So they're all kind of getting dried at the same time, even though I'm focusing mostly on the one. This one is my favorite. And it turns the modeling paste a light green color because the tea leaves are green. And again, I don't see any bubbling of the modeling paste yet. I can smell the green tea leaves. Here's the coffee. And this one is totally covered, so even the back of it, you can feel the moisture. So I'm going to dry some from the back. And then turn it over and dry again from the front. And you smell that coffee. It smells so good. And lots of wonderful texture. It's not smooth, it's bumpy. You got some high places, some low places. You got the colors from the ATC design that was done on it before it had this on. And again, the texture paste is not reacting in any way. It's just drying. There's no bubbling. This has a lot of peaks on it. Alright, so these are the experiments for today. Let me give you a last close-up. The green tea. Egg crate pulp. And these are fairly dry. If I push on the tips, it's going to make those really fine points just kind of fall over, like this one right here that kind of fell over. And then this one is the coffee one. And it's almost all the way dry. It's real stiff. So these are going to be fun to color. I'll do that in another video. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe. Hit the thumbs up to show that you like the video. Leave me a comment so I know what you think and your opinions. And if you have any ideas of something you want me to try out, if I can do it, I'd love to do that for you. You guys have a blessed day. Thank you for watching.